My business trip ended earlier than expected, so I quietly returned home, hoping to surprise my family. Instead, I heard my 5-year-old daughter say to my wife, "Mommy, Romeo dad is so much better than dad. I want to go out and play with him again in the future." Separated by an iron door, I heard my wife Rebecca, usually as cold as an iceberg, laugh happily as she replied, "Of course, he's your biological father. After all, Romeo was my best friend." Chapter 1. I quickly arranged for a paternity test. Now, the results were sitting right in front of me. Even after chain-smoking several cigarettes, I still couldn't gather the courage to open it. What if the baby was really mine? Wouldn't that make me the villain who doubted his own wife? CEO Chan. CEO Chan. It wasn't until my secretary called my name several times that I realized I had lost my composure. CEO Chan. "This is the contract for the land parcel in the eastern suburbs. Please take a look." I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "Just leave it there. I'll review it later." We had invested tremendous effort to secure that piece of land. Once the project was finalized, the company's assets could easily double, yet I couldn't feel happy at all. After my secretary left the office, I opened the window and took in a breath of icy air. In the end, I opened the paternity test report. The report showed that my precious daughter, Julia, and I shared no biological relationship whatsoever. Black and white. I stared at it for a long while, then unexpectedly laughed. Of course, looking back now, all the signs seemed so obvious. After we got married, Rebecca, who had never shown much affection toward me, suddenly appeared one day wearing a sheer nightgown and became unusually proactive. Caught up in our passion, we didn't use protection. Yet as she kissed me, she told me she was in her safe period. From that day on, she became noticeably gentler toward me. I was overjoyed, believing that my sincere devotion had finally melted her icy heart. What delighted me even more was that our passionate night brought a new life into the world, and my wife, who had always insisted on remaining child-free, actually took the initiative to keep and raise the baby. "This is the fruit of our love," she said. Of course we should have her. I was deeply moved. On the day she gave birth, the baby was too large, and the delivery became dangerously difficult. She nearly died on the operating table. I knelt outside the operating room countless times, praying that my life could be exchanged for hers. Fortunately, both mother and daughter survived safely. Never wanting her to suffer through childbirth again, I voluntarily underwent a vasectomy. Now, thinking back on it, the mother and child whose lives I would have gladly traded my own to save turned out to be another man's child and the child's mother. How foolish could I be? If I hadn't suddenly decided that day to surprise them and accidentally overheard their conversation, I would probably still be pathetically trying to please them even now. Rebecca clearly knew that this child had nothing to do with me, yet she still felt perfectly entitled to order me around. Did she think that because I treated her well, I was an easy target to take advantage of? Chapter 2. Rebecca Lynn and I had the kind of marriage arrangement most commonly seen among prominent families. Our families were well matched in status and background, and we were introduced through mutual connections. I fell for her at first sight, but she had no feelings for me. She already had someone she loved, a man who had gone abroad in their youth and whom she had never been able to forget. Not long afterward, however, the Lynn family encountered a massive business crisis. Like something straight out of a cliché drama, she and her parents came to my family for help. They said that if we were willing to help the Lynn family survive the crisis, she would marry me. At the time, I was overjoyed. I imagined how happy we would be after marriage. I would treat her with sincerity and devotion, hoping she would one day return the same love to me. As long as I was genuine enough, she would surely see my worth, especially after Julia was born. Our relationship seemed to grow even closer. She would see me off in the mornings. I would pick Julia up and drop her off on time every day. People were always complimenting us on our marriage. I thought it was my warmth and dedication that had finally melted her icy heart, but reality delivered a resounding slap to my face. We had been married for 6 years. Julia was already 5 years old. All this time, Rebecca had known that Julia's biological father was someone else. Julia knew it too. The only one kept in the dark was me. Only me. Rebecca had accepted all the love and care I gave to her and Julia as though it were completely natural. She must have thought I was a fool, easy to deceive and easy to manipulate. Suddenly, my phone rang. A message from Rebecca appeared. "Wasn't your business trip supposed to be over already? Why aren't you home yet? Julia keeps asking for her daddy." When someone is speechlessly frustrated, they might actually laugh. I had prepared gifts long ago. I had rushed home early, wanting to surprise both mother and daughter. But what had I ended up seeing? Not a surprise, a shock. At the time, I was genuinely afraid I might lose control and do something reckless. So I left immediately and checked into a hotel, staying there for an entire week. Only now had she noticed that I was back. In fact, 2 days ago, I had even sent her a voice message telling her that I would be working late at the company recently and that staying at a nearby hotel would be more convenient. Rebecca had never even opened it. Or perhaps she never noticed my message at all. When you don't care about someone, you naturally don't notice these things. Thinking about it, I rubbed my temples, which had been tense for days without relief, and an overwhelming wave of exhaustion washed over me. This relationship had been unbalanced from beginning to end. I was truly exhausted. Chapter 3. Since meeting Rebecca, this was the first time I had ever ignored one of her messages. She had never been particularly patient with me. My delayed response had obviously annoyed her, because one phone call after another came flooding in. I desperately wanted to ask her how she could treat me this way. Had our marriage been nothing but a lie from the very beginning? But I forced my emotions down and answered the call with what little rationality I had left. What greeted me was an immediate barrage of accusations. Kevin, not replying to my messages. Are you dead or something? I was in a meeting. A meeting. For days and nights on end. You didn't even have time to send a message back. What? Because you're such an important busy man. Do you even remember that you have a wife and daughter? Julia calls for her daddy every day. How can you do this to us? I said nothing, because I wanted to ask her something too. Had I really wronged them? Had she forgotten that our daughter had absolutely no biological connection to me? But when my eyes landed on the family photo sitting on my desk, where Julia was kissing my cheek, my heart softened for a brief moment. And during that rare moment of weakness, Rebecca threw another icy sentence at me. Julia has a fever. She wants cake. Go buy one and bring it to the hospital. Then she hung up. Thank you for being so cold. You brought me right back to reality. In the past, I would always go buy it myself. This time, I had my assistant wait in line and purchase the cake instead. After receiving it, I wandered toward the hospital absent-mindedly, thinking about Julia, whom I had raised with my own hands since she was a baby. I still decided to give Rebecca some dignity. As long as she admitted her mistake, I could give her a respectable divorce. But when I reached the hospital room, I heard Julia's excited voice from inside. Daddy Romeo, a cake will be delivered later. I'll share it with you. My footsteps froze. I looked into the room. There was my good friend Romeo, the pediatrician, wearing a white coat and smiling as he gently pinched Julia's cheek. My daughter treats her daddy the best, doesn't she? Rebecca stood nearby, watching their interaction with a tender and happy expression. It was an expression I had never once seen on her face. Inside the room, the family of 3 looked warm and harmonious. Outside the door, I felt like a complete stranger. Something lodged itself painfully in my throat. I had rushed all the way here carrying a cake for my daughter. And in the end, was I supposed to feed it to the brother who had cheated with my wife? What was I to them? Some pathetic fool. Standing outside the door, I felt like a stone statue. I didn't want to go in. Yet I couldn't bring myself to leave in such a humiliating manner either. It was Romeo who noticed me first. A bright smile spread across his open, friendly face. Ah, Kevin's here. Why are you standing outside? Come in, come in. The moment Rebecca heard that I had arrived, the happy smile on her face seemed to freeze. Instantly, she returned to her usual cold and distant expression. Clicking her tongue impatiently, she said, "What took you so long?" Chapter 4. I glanced at her and shot back. "And you don't know how long the line is at that cake shop?" Romeo stepped forward with a cheerful smile. "Looks like Julia's in for a treat today." The moment Julia heard that, she started bouncing excitedly on the hospital bed. "Cake, cake, I want cake right now." Rebecca immediately cut her off. "No, Romeo already gave you something to eat earlier. You can have it later." But Romeo waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, let her eat if she wants to. She's still growing. One slice of cake won't hurt." Rebecca smiled helplessly and spread her hands. "You're always spoiling her." Julia could tell her mother had given in. She instantly broke into a delighted grin. I was standing right there in the hospital room, yet I couldn't get a single word in. Like an outsider, Julia didn't call me dad. Rebecca didn't even bother to give me a pleasant look. Even a delivery driver would at least get a thank you. And here I was, forced to watch my dear friend Romeo shower my wife and daughter with affection. What was I, exactly? Part of your little game. After seeing Rebecca relent, Romeo reached for the bag in my hand. When I made no move to hand it over, he reminded me, "Kevin, give me the cake." There was something in his eyes, a sense of entitlement, as if he were the true head of this family, and I was merely the delivery guy, an outsider. I thought about it. If I had been the one trying to persuade Rebecca to let Julia eat dessert, she would never have agreed. Rebecca had always refused to let anyone challenge her when it came to raising Julia. Now I realized it wasn't that she wouldn't allow anyone to disagree with her. She simply wouldn't allow outsiders to disagree with her. A surge of anger exploded inside me. At home, she rarely treated me kindly. Only when she needed something from me would she soften her attitude. And now, in this hospital room, She and Romeo were playing off each other perfectly, acting like a loving couple while blatantly ignoring my existence. Up to this point, Julia hadn't called me dad even once. Her mind was occupied entirely by her daddy Romeo. I reflected on things for about 5 seconds. Had I been too good to all of them? So good that this cheating couple felt comfortable provoking me right in front of my face, convinced I wouldn't react. They made me raise another man's child, and now they were openly flirting in front of me. What did they think I was? A pushover? I looked at Romeo's outstretched hand and his completely self-righteous expression. A cold laugh escaped me. Then I tossed the entire bag into the hospital trash can. Since she's already eaten his food, she doesn't need mine. Having both at the same time doesn't seem very appropriate, does it? As I spoke, I stared directly into Rebecca's eyes. Rebecca and Romeo both froze. The moment Julia saw the cake being thrown away, she completely lost it. Jumping and screaming on the bed, she cried, "Bad daddy, you're a bad daddy. I don't want you as my daddy anymore." Rebecca frowned and pointed at me. "Kevin, are you out of your mind?" Romeo immediately pulled Julia into his arms and comforted her softly. "It's okay, Julia. Good girl. Daddy Romeo will buy you another one later. It's just a cake, right? If it's gone, it's gone. We don't care." Then he turned to me and said reproachfully, "Kevin, that's not right. I know you're upset because I bought Julia food without telling you first, but I only did it because I care about her. If you're angry at me, then be angry at me. How can you take it out on a child?" Sniffling in his arms, Julia screamed, "I only want Daddy Romeo. I only want Daddy Romeo. I don't want the bad daddy anymore." Rebecca looked thoroughly displeased. "Julia is sick. Who exactly are you putting on this performance for? Is this how a father behaves?" Fine. At my age, I thought I had seen it all. Apparently, I was still capable of learning new things. I stared straight at Rebecca until she became visibly uncomfortable. Being a father like this isn't good enough. I laughed softly. "That's okay. Doesn't she already have another father?" Rebecca instinctively opened her mouth to argue, but the moment she met my gaze, something in my eyes frightened her. "You three make quite a happy family." Then I looked at Romeo. "If you're going to be a father, then take responsibility as one. Why are you explaining all this to an outsider like me?" The moment those words left my mouth, I turned and walked out of the room. Behind me, Rebecca's face had gone pale with panic. Chapter 5. I stepped into the elevator, but Rebecca chased after me and stopped the doors from closing. She grabbed my arm and demanded anxiously, "Kevin, what nonsense were you talking about just now? Have you lost your mind?" Holding the elevator door open, I looked at her with a cold smile. "What do you think? Would someone with a functioning brain spend years raising another man's child?" She was instantly speechless. Then, almost reflexively, she began arguing. "What is wrong with you today? You've been talking nonsense all day. What do you mean someone else's child? She's our child." I had already made it that obvious, and she still wanted to lie. Seriously, she could fool other people if she wanted, but she should stop fooling herself. I was done being the fool in this story. Not another minute. I spoke directly. "Let's set a time and get the divorce paperwork done." This whole thing was ridiculous. The moment I received the paternity test results, I should have filed for divorce immediately. Instead, I had stupidly wanted to see Julia one last time. Fine. That was on me for being soft-hearted. After seeing the three of them together, looking so happy and complete, the last trace of fantasy in my heart finally disappeared. Rebecca widened her eyes. Then, as always, she frowned at me. "Have you really lost your mind? Everything is fine. Why would we get divorced?" People began entering the elevator. I released my hand from the door and stepped back out. One step at a time, I walked toward Rebecca until I had her pinned against the wall. Pointing a finger at her forehead, I asked quietly, "This is the third time you've said that today, Rebecca. The one with a problem isn't me. It's you. What kind of person sleeps with her husband's best friend, skips protection, and then tricks her husband into raising the child for 5 years? Rebecca, I think I've finally gotten to know the real you. You're not nearly as rigid and conservative as I thought. You're actually pretty creative." After saying that, I turned and walked into the elevator. As the doors closed, Rebecca opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Chapter 6. After returning home, I initially planned to pack my belongings and leave. Then I stopped and thought about it. Why should I be the one leaving? So I gathered up Rebecca's and Julia's belongings and dumped everything outside the front door. Then I changed the password on the smart lock. Only after finishing did I realize that Rebecca had called me countless times. I hadn't heard any of them. She had also left me a flood of messages. "Kevin, are you serious? Did you hear some ridiculous rumor or something? Think carefully. Our marriage isn't just about the two of us. It represents the long-term partnership between the Chan family and the Lin family." Ha! I laughed. Even now, She still hadn't figured out her position. A partnership between our families. That had never existed. The Chan family had always been supporting the Lin family. Without the Chans, the Lins would be nothing. Back then, our marriage had been a business transaction. Over the past few years, the Lin family's performance had steadily improved. Did she really think that was because of the Lin family's capabilities? The truth was that it had always been because the Chan family was backing them. My family and I had done so much for her family. For her. And what did I get in return? A wife who only smiled at me when she needed something. A best friend who betrayed me. And the child those two had me raise. I had been taken advantage of by both of them for years. And apparently that still wasn't enough. I ignored Rebecca's messages. Instead, I contacted my lawyer and had a divorce agreement drafted. After reviewing it and finding no issues, I instructed the lawyer to send it directly to Rebecca. As expected, my phone immediately exploded with another call from her. Kevin, enough already. You're actually serious about this? Her voice was full of anger. Did she really think I was still the man she could manipulate whenever she wanted? Rebecca, of course I'm serious. Who jokes about divorce? Think carefully. If we get divorced, don't come crawling back and beg me later. Judging from her tone, she sounded like she actually believed that. I burst out laughing. After 6 years of marriage, how had I never noticed that Rebecca had such a talent for comedy? After laughing, however, I felt a little sad. Even at a time like this, she still dared to speak to me with that attitude. The only reason was because she knew how much I had loved her. Was being a faithful wife really that difficult? Did she really have to do something this outrageous with my best friend? I let out a long sigh. Rebecca, Romeo is the man you've never been able to forget, isn't he? There was a clear pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice suddenly turned flustered. We're talking about us. Why are you bringing him into this? It's so annoying. Apparently unwilling to continue that topic, she hung up immediately after speaking. Chapter 7. I had thought the divorce would be straightforward. What I didn't expect was Rebecca dragging things out and refusing to give me a clear answer. One day, my parents, who spent most of their time traveling all over the world, unexpectedly called and asked me to come home. I figured that if I was divorcing Rebecca, I should let them know anyway. So I went back. The moment I stepped through the front door, I saw rows of unfamiliar shoes. The Lin family and my parents were chatting happily, calling each other family, and Rebecca Lin was actually cooking in the kitchen. Julia had been watching television. The moment she saw me walk in, she jumped off the couch and threw herself at me. Daddy. She sounded thrilled. That was very different from how she had acted the last time she saw me at the hospital. I stopped in the entryway. Julia's excited shout drew everyone's attention to me. Oh, so this was the game now. How dare Rebecca do this? After everything she'd done, she still had the nerve to bring our parents into this and try to smooth things over. Sure enough, the moment I sat down, the nanny took Julia outside to play on the lawn. My father looked at me sternly. Rebecca told us you've been talking about divorce lately. What is wrong with you as a father? Are you just giving up on your child? From his tone, it sounded like I was the one who had done something wrong. As expected, Rebecca's mother quickly followed. Kevin, back then, we only felt comfortable entrusting Rebecca to you because we knew your feelings for her were genuine. Everything has been fine all these years. Why are you suddenly talking about divorce for no reason? Let me tell you something. Whatever temptations exist outside the marriage, they're temporary. What's truly important is building a good life at home. Rebecca's father immediately joined in. I'm telling you, as a man, women outside are like hotel rooms. Your wife is your home. Pull yourself together and take care of whatever's happening outside. When you come home, you're still partners on the same team. Why keep talking about divorce? Honestly, Julie is about to start elementary school. Acting this impulsively isn't good. The expressions on both their faces were filled with disappointment. My mother remained silent, but even she looked at me as if I were a son who had let her down. What exactly had Rebecca told them? Impressive. She had somehow convinced all 4 parents that I was the one at fault. I sat quietly for a moment before speaking. Finished? Is it finally my turn to talk? The 4 of them exchanged confused glances. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the paternity test report that I had practically memorized from reading it so many times. Then I slapped it onto the table. Let's skip dinner today. I originally wanted to leave Rebecca some dignity. I've already done more than enough for her. But now, I've changed my mind. If I save dignity for someone like your precious daughter, then what happens to decent people like me? How good had I been to her over the years? Good enough that she had mistaken me for a complete simp. The kind who would accept anything without complaint. How could someone's sense of entitlement grow this large? Since she had the courage to drag both families into this, did she really think I would stay silent? Chapter 8. The moment I said that, both sets of parents sensed that something serious was going on. For once, everyone fell silent and looked at me. Rebecca, stop pretending to be busy. Come out. And everyone else, come over and hear exactly why I'm insisting on this divorce. Rebecca turned off the stove, washed her hands, dried them, and took her time coming out. Things she had never once done at home. Who exactly was this performance for? She was even wearing the dress I had bought her for our wedding anniversary. Back then, she had glanced at it once and shoved it into the closet, never wearing it a single time. See? She always knew how to make me happy. She simply never wanted to. What I hadn't expected was for her to wear it on an occasion like this, and then gather both families together while subtly implying that I was the one who had done something wrong. Cooking, wearing the dress I bought her. Was this supposed to be her version of admitting fault? Rebecca must have thought I was some hopeless fool. What? Were the words, "I'm sorry," physically painful for her to say? The irritation inside me ignited instantly. Like a firecracker, my temper exploded. I put on a friendly smile and flipped the paternity report over, revealing the title on the front. Everyone here can read, right? Then take a look for yourselves. I didn't want to waste another word. The moment Rebecca saw what I had taken out, all the color drained from her face. Her lips trembled as she stared at me in horror. You, how could you have done a test like that? Neither side's parents looked good. My mother immediately snatched up the report and began flipping through it. Then she reached the results page. A sharp cry escaped her lips. The next second, she collapsed back onto the sofa, breathing heavily in shock. Chapter 9. After seeing the expressions on my parents' faces once they finished reading the paternity test report, Rebecca's parents stared at each other with their mouths hanging open. Neither of them dared to pick up the report. Talk about what? Tell me, after seeing this, what exactly is there left to talk about? 6 years of marriage. Haven't I given you enough dignity already? You just had to make sure everyone ended up miserable, didn't you, Rebecca? I looked at Rebecca. She seemed as though she had suffered some devastating blow. I found it laughable. The person who caused all of this was standing there looking like the victim. I was done holding back. So I let loose. Rebecca, who exactly are you putting on this shocked expression for? You were personally involved when you and Romeo slept together, weren't you? Huh? Or did you suddenly develop amnesia? Come on. Let's take another look at the report. Can you read? Maybe I should read it aloud for you. Julia is determined to have no biological relationship with Kevin. Rebecca couldn't respond. Instead, she sank to the floor and started sobbing uncontrollably. I crouched down in front of her and continued without mercy, trying to avoid the issue. Not a chance. Just sign the divorce papers already. If you really care about Julia, then her biological father should be the one attending her elementary school parent meetings. Rebecca cried so hard she could barely breathe. Suddenly, Rebecca's father, his face flushed red with rage, raised his hand for the first time in his life and slapped his precious daughter across the face. The crack echoed through the room. Her cheek immediately turned bright red, and tears streamed down even faster. Rebecca's mother was heartbroken and grabbed Rebecca's father. Don't hit the child. Don't hit the child. I looked at the two old hypocrites and immediately started cursing. A child. She's still a child. She had a kid with another man, and that kid is already 5 years old, and you're still calling her a child? If you want to discipline her, take her home and do it behind closed doors. You can beat her to death for all I care. Just stop putting on this pathetic performance in my house. After hearing that, Rebecca's father turned his anger on his wife. Look at what you've spoiled into existence. How can she do something like this and still face her in-laws? My mother looked at the chaotic scene. Any criticism she had prepared for me vanished completely. I stood up and walked directly in front of Rebecca's parents. I've been calling you father-in-law and mother-in-law all these years, but all you've done is make my life miserable. So let's stop with that. Listen up, old man, old woman. This is what your daughter did. Let's get the divorce done immediately. For once, my mother showed some backbone. She stood up and said coldly, "Leave. No one in this family wants to see this woman right now." Faced with such blunt words from our family, the Lin family looked utterly humiliated, especially Rebecca. She still stood there in a daze. Perhaps she'd never seen me this angry before. She had done something so disgusting. Yet she had apparently never considered the possibility of being exposed. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My sharp tongue couldn't stay quiet. Get out. I treated you well because you were my wife. You cheated on me and expect me to keep smiling at you. The entire family stood frozen, not knowing what to do, yet none of them moved. Finally, my father slammed his hand onto the table. "Steward, show our guests out." Only then did Rebecca's father finally realize how serious the situation was. Panic flooded his face. Offending me alone might not have been disastrous, but offending my father was a completely different matter. Without the Chan family's support, any talk of the Chan family continuing to back the Lin family would become pure fantasy. In the end, Rebecca's father forcibly dragged Rebecca's mother, Rebecca, and Julia toward the door. The entire family fled in disgrace. The reunion dinner, in the end, never happened. Chapter 10. After discussing the details of the divorce with my parents, I returned home. There, I found Rebecca sitting outside the front door, tears streaming down her face as she waited for me. I'd changed the password. She couldn't get in. When she saw me, she looked up, and to my surprise, there was even a trace of resentment in her eyes. "Kevin, I've never been hit by anyone in my entire life. Look at me now. Are you satisfied? Has your anger gone away?" She slowly stood up. The dress I had given her was wrinkled and disheveled. The red, swollen handprint on her left cheek was impossible to miss. What? Was she trying to gain sympathy from me? I wasn't the one who hit her. The whole thing felt absurd. So I asked, "You slept with my best friend, used no protection, and ended up having a child. Then your solution was to let me unknowingly raise that child for 6 years. Now your father slapped you because the truth came out and he felt humiliated. And somehow you're implying that I should calm down, forgive everything, and get back together with you." Before all this happened, Rebecca had never heard me speak so bluntly. Apparently, she couldn't handle it. She let out a choked sob and nearly collapsed on the spot. I ignored her and unlocked the door. Rebecca immediately shoved her hand into the gap and tried to force her way inside. But when she realized I had no intention of slowing down as I closed the door, she panicked and pulled her hand back. The door slammed shut, leaving her outside. From the other side, she shouted, "Kevin, do you really have to be this heartless?" Using the last bit of patience I had left, I answered seriously, "You don't actually think I'm a heartless one, do you? There were countless opportunities to avoid all of this. You could have prevented this tragedy at every turn, but instead, you chose every disgusting option available. Rebecca, these were your choices, weren't they?" She fell silent. Word by word, I pressed on, "If you didn't want to marry me, then you shouldn't have married me. But if you were going to marry me, why did you have a child with another man? And then make me raise her? You're truly something else. Now that we're divorcing, won't you finally be free to be with Romeo?" Rebecca was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Between sobs, she stammered, "Kevin, it's not like that. Please, just listen to my explanation." The moment I heard that, my anger flared again. "Explanation my ass. I only have one question for you. Is Julia Romeo's daughter or not?" The crying outside the door gradually quieted. Silence, an admission without words. For the first time since receiving the paternity test results, I had heard her acknowledge the truth, even though she hadn't actually spoken. My chest still tightened painfully. "Sign the divorce papers, otherwise I'll file for divorce in court. And trust me, that won't look good for your family." After saying those final words, I walked deeper into the house. No matter how much she cried or screamed outside, I refused to respond. Eventually, her commotion became so disruptive that other residents complained to property management. Several staff members came and tried to persuade her to leave, but Rebecca seemed to have completely lost control. She shouted that unless I opened the door, she wasn't going anywhere. Then she screamed even louder, "After all these years together, you're just throwing everything away. What kind of person are you? If you won't think about me, at least think about Julia." Even now, she was still trying to place the blame on me. She refused to believe that every consequence she was facing was the result of her own choices. Think about Julia. Whenever I thought about Julia, I thought about Rebecca and Romeo sleeping together. Then I thought about all the years I had spent raising Julia with my own hands. Damn it, the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I was furious enough to consider calling the police, but when I did, they informed me that legally we were still husband and wife. They couldn't remove her on harassment grounds. So instead, I sent a text message to Romeo. He rushed over shortly afterward. At last, he managed to pull Rebecca away. By then, she seemed completely drained. Perhaps she had cried herself exhausted. She allowed Romeo to hold her as she continued sobbing, and together, they finally left. Chapter 11. After a week of silence, Romeo actually asked to meet and talk. He even had the nerve to call me his brother. What was this? Cheat with my wife and then try to play the friendship card? I got straight to the point. So the person you could never stop thinking about while studying in the United States was Rebecca. Romeo nodded and began telling his story. He had been a poor student, surviving in America through scholarships and endless part-time jobs. Rebecca, on the other hand, was a wealthy heiress who had everything she could ever want. Yet somehow, they had fallen deeply in love. They made a promise that once Romeo achieved something significant in life, he would return and formally ask for her hand in marriage. But in her second year back home, her family ran into trouble. I understood immediately. That was when I had poured all my effort into saving her family's business crisis and happily married her. Then I took leave and came back for your wedding. I never expected the bride to be her. Romeo had always been a meticulous person. Before their relationship became official, he had never posted photos of Rebecca. He had only casually mentioned to us that he had met a woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. I remembered being puzzled at the time. He had come all the way back to attend my wedding, but whenever our friends asked about the woman he loved, he would look heartbroken and say, "If I can't give her the life she wants, there's no point showing you her picture." What noble-sounding nonsense. I cut off Romeo's emotional storytelling and told him what he had really been thinking back then. What you actually meant was, I couldn't help her family when they were in trouble. Then my buddy ended up marrying the woman I love. Must be nice being rich. Damn it. Fine. I can't marry her anymore, but I can still sleep with her. Faced with my blunt accusation, Romeo froze with his mouth half open. No matter how beautifully he tried to describe their story, from the perspective of the men they betrayed, they were nothing more than a disgusting cheating couple. When did Julia happen? The question hurt to ask. After a long silence, he finally answered, "It was during your wedding. She was in the lounge." I picked up the glass of ice water in front of me and threw it directly into his face. Water soaked through his suit. On our wedding day, Rebecca had suddenly told me she felt tired after drinking and wanted to rest in the lounge for a while. Meanwhile, I had been outside, accompanying both families and making rounds to toast our relatives and guests. And while I was doing that, they were inside betraying me. Fine. They would both pay for this. Chapter 12. Rebecca Lynn kept refusing to sign the divorce agreement. In response, my family unilaterally suspended all cooperation with the Lynn family. The Chan family suffered some losses as well, but to us, it was little more than pocket change. If we lost it, we lost it. For the Lynn family, however, it was devastating. The Lynn family had never been on the same level as the Chan family to begin with. The two companies weren't even comparable in scale. After the Lin family had suffered its earlier crisis, it was only through the Chan family's support that they had managed to survive. Now, we had inventory ready to ship. We simply refused to deliver it. As a result, the Lin family missed deadlines with their own clients. One problem led to another. Before long, Rebecca's parents personally forced her to sign the divorce papers. Her father cursed furiously. "When you were with Kevin, all you could think about was that shameless Romeo. Now that Kevin doesn't want you anymore, why are you pretending to be devoted and heartbroken? And you're dragging the whole family down with you. You're completely useless." Rebecca's mother cried every day. She could barely bring herself to care for Julia anymore, especially after the day the family was forced to pay an enormous contract penalty. That day, Julia happily cheered. "Yay, I don't want the bad daddy anymore. He wouldn't even let me eat cake. Now I have Daddy Romeo. I can eat cake every day." Rebecca's mother was so furious she nearly slapped her, but her upbringing stopped her hand halfway. Instead, she became so angry that she fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital. When she woke up and saw Romeo standing by her bedside, calling her mother-in-law and fussing over her with concern, she immediately lost consciousness again. After waking up for the second time, she decided that all her suffering was Romeo's fault. In her eyes, Romeo was a homewrecker. She went through the hospital ward telling anyone who would listen how Romeo had seduced her daughter, betrayed his best friend, and caused massive losses to her family. Within half a day, nurses and doctors throughout the hospital were looking at Romeo with contempt. But that wasn't the end of it. Using my connections, I uncovered evidence that Romeo had paid someone to write his graduate thesis years ago. I reported him to the hospital. The only reason I knew about it was because we had once been friends. Having a medical master's thesis from an American university ghostwritten wasn't cheap. Back then, Romeo had borrowed money from me. He never told me what it was for. He had been careful, but being careful only gets you so far when the person you're dealing with has resources. At the time, I had simply wanted to find out what he spent the money on. I never expected to uncover such a valuable gift. The day he was suspended from the hospital, I kindly showed up to pick him up after work. Well, look at that. Not working today. Must be nice having so much free time. A warm home, a wife, a child. Why don't you go home and take care of your family? Oh, and one more thing. We're definitely not brothers anymore. Remember that $200,000 you borrowed from me right before graduation? I'd appreciate repayment by next Monday. Otherwise my lawyer will be happy to handle it. Romeo stared at me for a long time. Finally, he figured out that I had been the one who reported him. The evidence of his academic fraud was undeniable, and I had already made some friendly phone calls to other hospitals. None of them were interested in hiring him, but the debt he owed me. The promissory note was still legally binding. He looked ready to explode. His degree was worthless. His job was gone, and he still had to repay the money. Repay it to the very men responsible for costing him his career. That same day, Romeo sped recklessly through the city in a rage. Eventually he crashed into a guardrail. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but the more he thought about everything, the angrier he became. Instead of calming down, he got back into his damaged car and started speeding again. This time, it became a hit-and-run incident. Detention, fines, license revoked. After that, whenever Julia got sick, Romeo couldn't even drive her anywhere. All transportation responsibilities fell onto Rebecca. The two of them had once dreamed of finally being together with the person they had loved since their youth, but now one had lost his job, and the other's family was on the verge of bankruptcy. Originally, Romeo could at least play the role of a devoted father, picking Julia up from school, taking care of her at home, and helping around the house. But after losing both his driver's license and his car, he became little more than a stay-at-home husband. As the family's income shrank dramatically, he began complaining about Rebecca's extravagant spending habits. Rebecca, meanwhile, found him increasingly useless. Before long, their household became a battlefield. A small argument every 3 days, a major fight every 2. Then one day, Julia's kindergarten teacher called me. Apparently, Julia had been crying constantly at school. She kept saying she wanted Daddy Kevin, not Daddy Romeo. The teacher sounded embarrassed. I know a little about your family situation, but could you possibly come see her? For the child's sake. I thought about it for a moment, then I agreed. Chapter 13. The next day, I went to the kindergarten. The moment Julia saw me, she ran over, wrapped her arms around my leg, and excitedly called out, "Daddy." I smiled and pinched her cheek. Then I said pleasantly, "I'm not your father, you little punk. Your father is Romeo, and your mother is Rebecca. Remember that. If you ever mention my name again, I'll blow your dad to pieces." Julia stared at me in shock. Then she burst into frightened tears. Good. At least that little troublemaker probably wouldn't bother me again. Then I walked into the teacher's office. I picked up her staff badge and tossed it into the trash. "You knew about my family situation, and you still had the nerve to call me. Come see the child. Is she my child? I can't believe this. You actually handed a child over to a man with no biological relationship to her. I've already reported you to the education authorities. You don't need to keep this job anymore." The words had barely left my mouth when the principal hurried over and informed the teacher that she was being suspended. Of course, the speed of that decision had something to do with the connections I had used. The teacher stood there in complete disbelief. Excellent. That would teach people not to disturb my peace. Later, while traveling through Northern Europe and watching the Northern Lights, I met the love of my life. We had children of our own. Gradually, I forgot all about the cheating couple and their child. But news of the Lynn family's bankruptcy still made its way through our social circle. Apparently, Rebecca and Romeo eventually divorced as well. At first, Romeo still carried himself like a prestigious overseas graduate and refused to consider anything except high-paying jobs. Then an economic downturn hit. Many of the jobs he had once looked down on no longer wanted him. Later, he tried working as a food delivery driver for a day. He couldn't handle the hardship and quit immediately. Honestly, he was quite something. He eventually started posting provocative dance videos on short video platforms and became a male influencer known for suggestive content. Rebecca hated it. The two of them argued repeatedly because of it. Romeo accused Rebecca of being spoiled by a life of luxury and acting like a wealthy heiress even after her family had gone bankrupt. Furious, Rebecca took Julia and left home. Ironically, that only made it easier for Romeo to continue his online content. Then one day, Romeo was arrested for allegedly being involved in illegal sexual transactions. Well, Rebecca's father hadn't been wrong when he called him a shameless man. After that, Rebecca found a new boyfriend. According to rumors, he was an extremely submissive man who tolerated all her tantrums and abuse without fighting back. Everyone has their own preferences, I suppose. I respected it, but I certainly didn't wish them well. Some time later, Rebecca appeared at my front door. Her hair was a mess as she knelt and begged me for help. It turned out that the boyfriend who seemed honest and wealthy was actually a financial fraudster. Everything she had been enjoying was built on money obtained through fraud. The man had been arrested, and Rebecca's comfortable lifestyle came crashing down overnight. At first, I felt some sympathy for Julia. After all, I had raised her myself for years. I thought perhaps I could help a little. Maybe I could introduce Rebecca to a normal job and help her learn how to live independently instead of constantly relying on men. But the first thing she asked me was whether I could find a way to get her fraudster boyfriend released. I was stunned. The creativity was truly impressive. I immediately called the police. Before long, Rebecca was taken away as well. After all, to me now, she was nothing more than a stranger, wasn't she? That evening, I still had a movie date with my wife. As for helping an ex-wife, not a chance.